Nope, we're doing it all again. What is going on, everybody? Today we are back, and today I am going to be having a fun game for myself. What would I do if I was the GM of the Minnesota Vikings right now? Now, you see, we're coming off of a loss yesterday, 31-24 was the final score against the New York Giants. Not a great game, of course, but that leads me to the boat. I'm already looking forward to next year. What do I think they should do next year? Maybe not to be successful next year. Obviously, I want to be successful next year, but what do I think would be the best for the future of this team? Well, guess what? Today, I have created a whole sheet full of different players and other personnel as well. What do I think the team should do in the future? And that is what I will be going through today. I will be playing the role of GM for this next year, but it's just for this next year, not the super long-term future. But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. It's going to be a good time, so let's get around to it. We're going to start by talking about yesterday a little bit. Obviously, really tough game. Kirk Cousins played very well. I won't even lie. A lot of people are going to bash him that they lost the game because Kirk Cousins doesn't win big games, which is true to an extent, but he wasn't really the reason they lost yesterday. When your defense gives up 400 plus to Daniel Jones and his no-name receivers, that's definitely not a recipe for success. So we'll get to the defense. I've got a lot of aging defensive players I'm going to talk about, a lot of people to cut, a lot of people that I'm going to give extensions to, and some people I'm going to try to trade. And we'll be getting around to all of that in today's video. So here we go. I know I said I was going to talk about yesterday, but there actually isn't a whole lot to talk about other than the fact that Kirk played pretty well. Kevin O'Connell definitely made some mistakes. I will say that. Had the Vikings scored at the end of the game, I would have been in full support of them going for two. I think they needed to win it then, right there. Their defense had been playing so poorly. I wouldn't have even trusted the defense in overtime to be able to hold them to 3 at that point. So that would have basically forced the Minnesota offense. They would have to score 7 on their possession, which is definitely a tough boat to be in. So I would have gone for 2. I would have gone for the win right there if I was the head coach, if I was Kevin. But we definitely need to talk first about their 3rd and 1 call. The throw from Kirk Cousins to JJ back to Kirk. That, dude, you can't do that. Don't get cute. I get frustrated. If you guys have watched here on the picks and predictions, sometimes I get frustrated when the team gets cute, especially that when they were in Detroit, when they had Dalvin, he was going to do the jump pass to Johnny Munt. You don't do that on the goal line. Just run the ball, get the points, or in this case, get the first down. It's 3rd and 1. There's no need to be throwing it all around to Kirk. And I like the idea of a creative play call, but we have to be smart with a creative play call. And I don't think that's very creative. What are you going to do when Kirk Cousins gets the ball? He's going to rumble forward for maybe 2 yards at the most. And in that case, he didn't. They swarmed him up right away. But whatever. That was just one thing that I thought was a mistake. Obviously, the defense was very bad. Well, I'll get to a lot of defensive players today, talk about my thoughts on them, and why should they be back, should they not be back. And spoiler, there are a lot of people that will not be back. But there are a select few people that I'm fine with handing an extension to or keeping them around next year on the current contract they're in. But I think that's kind of it there is about yesterday. Sad game, but that happens. So we are just going to kick it off right now. So I'm going to go through the players I've got written down, which are mostly defensive players, but I did do some offensive players as well. I wrote down their cap hit for next year or their cap hit for last year if they aren't on contract this year. I already kind of predetermined the result of what do I want to do with them. And then I also wrote down, if they're under contract next year, how much money would the Vikings save by cutting them? So we'll be going through those factors. Here we go, everybody. Man. All right, here we go. We're going to kick it off, obviously, at quarterback with Kirk Cousins because he's the biggest player of the team. He's the quarterback. He's the orchestrator. Next year, he's due $36 million. Savings, honestly, I don't even know. They wouldn't save much. I think, if I remember, I did all this stuff this morning. They would only save... I should pull up exactly because I'm not exactly sure what it is. They would not save a whole lot, if any, if they cut Kirk Cousins. So that kind of already gives away the result of what I'm going to be doing with Kirk. Okay, his dead cap is higher than his regular cap hit. So they would actually so it makes absolutely no sense to cut him at this point. So, what would I do with Kirk Cousins? I'm going to keep him for this year. This is his last year under contract, so I'm not going to give him an extension. Because, especially with Jefferson, we're going to give him an extension, which I'll probably talk about that when I get around to Jefferson. Kirk Cousins, we're not going to be able to pay him 30 plus million when we're paying Jefferson 30 plus million either. It's just not going to work. You're not going to be able to build a football team around that. But again, Jefferson's still going to be on a rookie contract this upcoming year. Even if they extend him, it'll still be 2 years before it kicks in because they also have a fifth-year option because he's a first-round pick. With that being said, I'm going to keep Kirk Cousins with his $36 million this year. There's really nothing they can do. Again, this is his last year under contract. Indy has a no-trade clause, so he would have to sign off. I don't think he would be able to do that. I don't think the Vikings are going to be able to find a logical way to trade him or cut him. I just don't think it's really that smart in this situation. Even for all the people that hate Kirk Cousins, I'm going to keep him around for next year under contract. But the key is I will not give him an extension this offseason. Again, he looks for a lot of money on short-term deals, which is dangerous because you can't really move money around when they're not getting long-term deals like some players. For example, I'm going to use Adam Thielen. He has a pretty long-term deal, even though he's only got 2 years left on it. But for the most part, when he signed his current deal he's on, it's a pretty long-term deal, 4+ years. So that means they can move money around and stuff. This is the same thing the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. He's on a 10-year deal, which really just means they can move a lot of money around over time to work with the cap. But Kirk and his agent a lot of times opt for short deals so that they really can't do that. He likes the short extensions, which is what happened last offseason. This was supposed to be his last year, but last offseason he got a 1-year extension, so that's going to be this upcoming year. So that's why this year is his last year, $36 million this year. I will keep him for this year, but not give him an extension. So I think this is going to be the last year of Kirk Cousins with the Vikings, to be honest. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, depends on who the fan you are. I like Kirk Cousins, but it's hard to like him when he's worth 36 million. He's kind of a puppet of Kevin O'Connell, you know? Same with Mike Zimmer, too. Like, we want him to be a leader, but the problem is he just needs coaching to be able to function. He can't function by himself. Like, Mahomes can lead a team, but Kirk can't. He can't lead if he can only lead if he has the right coaches around him. It's kind of hard to explain, but it feels like he's just kind of a piece of the puzzle when he needs to be the lead of the puzzle. That's what I think. So for Kirk, we're going to keep him for this year, but not give him an extension for the future. Next position group we have is running back. Dalvin Cook is currently due $14.1 million this upcoming year, or at least that's his cap hit. They would save $7.9 million if they chose to cut him or attempt to trade him. Again, Alexander Mattison will become a free agent this offseason, so he is now under contract for next year. Other running backs are Kane and Nwangu and Ty Chandler, and they are both on their rookie deals, so they'll still be around for a couple years. What would I do under this situation? I am going to attempt to trade Dalvin Cook, if possible. Otherwise, I'm going to cut it. Oh, sorry. Man. Should get my water bottle over here quick. Perfect. All right, I got my water bottle now. Now I won't be dying. All right. So, back to the running back group. I am going to attempt to trade Dalvin Cook. If they can't trade him, I'll cut him in hopes of signing Alexander Mattison to a cheap deal. Now, you see, the modern NFL says that running backs aren't really a big deal anymore. This is not true in the early 2000s when running backs were a big powerhouse, like Marshall Faulk comes to mind, but nowadays it's not really that way anymore. Sure, running backs are great, but a running back is a position that's very replaceable, and running backs tend to fall off pretty quickly. They don't have long-lived careers. Now, Obviously, guys like Todd Gurley come to mind, and prime Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott's still a really good running back, but he's nowhere, man, near prime anymore. And that's how I almost view Dalvin Cook as well. He's still a really good running back, but the issue is running backs are very replaceable. It's not hard to find running backs. And Dalvin Cook doesn't seem to be quite as explosive as he used to be anymore. I think time is on the worst side of him now. Like, he's beginning to regress. He doesn't hit holes like he used to be able to. He doesn't have that explosive factor anymore. And I feel like that's what Alexander Mattison brings in here is he's young. He can hit holes. He can be explosive when he needs to be. And yeah, obviously don't sign Mattison to a really, really big deal. But that's what I would do is trade or cut Dalvin Cook, re-sign Alexander Mattison to a hopefully more minimal deal. And yeah, I'd roll with Mattison as my running back one, maybe throw Kene Wangu and Ty Chandler in with some reps as well. The next one I've got is CJ Ham. He's the fullback here. He's currently due 3.8 against the cap next year. They would save $3 million if they cut him. Now for him, I wrote him as contingent, keep/cut. It all depends on Kevin O'Connell and if he chooses to use a running or a fullback next year. CJ Ham is a valuable fullback, but the issue is a lot of teams in this league don't use fullbacks anymore. And like I said, CJ Ham is definitely a really good fullback. He's one of the, I'd say for sure, top 5 in the league. But if the Vikings don't really use a fullback super often, then I'd cut him and save the $3 million. But if the Vikings choose to continue to use him, they used him sometimes in this offense. I thought maybe they would a bit more in that last game in Chicago. They definitely used him a lot. He had like 3 or 4 catches in that game. But he's good when they need him to be good. But the issue is, I just fear that his usage and his pay aren't gonna equal out. So he's a bit contingent for me. I would be okay with keeping Ham, but only if they use him in the offense. If he doesn't do a whole lot, then I would be fine with cutting him for the $3 million. So now that moves us to the wide receiver group. All right. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is still on a rookie deal this year, which is awesome. They'll be able to exercise his 5th-year option this offseason too, I believe. So that'll get him a semi-minimal deal for the 24 season as well. But this offseason, I would assume they're likely going to give a big extension to Justin Jefferson, probably around $30 million a year or so, maybe 3, 4, or 5 years, somewhere in that ballpark. So with that being said, that brings up one player that a lot of Viking fans are going to be sad to hear, and that's Adam Thielen. So before I talk about Adam Thielen, I obviously have to address the message his wife posted last night or yesterday following the game. It is a bit suspicious, and it implies, could he be around next year? Could he not be around next year? All right, there it is. Perfect. After the game, Adam Thielen's wife on Instagram, I don't have Instagram, so I'm just finding pictures of it from people around. She posted a picture of her and Adam, and it says, and just like that, the season and our time here in Minnesota might be at an end. Now, with that being said, could that mean, that could mean a lot of things. Next year, Adam Thielen is due $20 million against the cap. They would save $6.5 million if they cut him. I don't think anyone would trade for him at this point. But this is a tough one, obviously, in the hearts of a lot of fans around here. I have an Adam Thielen jersey. I actually wore it yesterday. It's my purple one. I wear what the team wears. The team was wearing purple, so I wore my purple Thielen. But people got to understand around here, football is a business. It's not always about the person, which is tough and it sounds kind of heartless. But, I mean, it's a business. We need to do what's best for the team. Which is why I'm going to cut Adam Thielen from the team. Now, this is definitely a tough choice going to be for Kwesi and for that front office, especially people that have been here a long time. But this is one of the things I initially thought is, why doesn't he just retire? Well, it's not that easy. If he retires, the Vikings would still have to eat his full cap hit for this year. But if they cut him, then the team would only have to eat his dead cap, which is his dead cap would be about 13 and a half million. The team would eat 13 and a half million, but if he retired, they would eat 20. I think it's like 19.9 or something exactly, which is definitely a lot of money. But let's be clear here. Again, like that message said, it seems like Adam wants to keep playing. But for weeks here, I've said he can't play. Sorry, Adam Thielen is just so bad, which is sad watching him. But he's old and he's slow, and it sounds like the Viking linebackers, because it is, and I'll get to them too. But I mean, Thielen's just old and he can't gain separation like he used to be able to. He used to be so good in the NFL in contested catches where he had very little separation, but he can't do that anymore, which is why he never gets the ball. He only gets one or two catches a game. Now, yesterday he had actually a really good game. But for the most part this season, a lot of fans complain, why doesn't Thielen get the ball? Well, I wonder. That's probably why. So it's obviously a tough choice, but it seems like Thielen does want to keep playing. And I would love to see him keep playing, but I wouldn't love to see him keep playing, at least under the current deal he's at here. A lot of fans talk about, also, I've seen there are a lot of fans saying, well, what if he just takes a pay cut, which would be great for the team, but I think he'd be better off just not playing here at all. With his production, I get the fans would love it. He's good moral support here, but people got to understand that if he comes back on a really cheap deal, he's not going to get much playing time. At least I would hope he doesn't, because they're playing him out there like he's still a wide receiver too, but he's really not a wide receiver too anymore. KJ gets more target. Well, I don't know if he gets more targets, but I think KJ is a better player. TJ is a better player. So to me, if Adam Thielen's back next year, I wouldn't want to see him in many snaps. So that's kind of the hard dilemma there is I thought about giving him a pay cut in this situation, but I think he'd be better off just cutting him and having him go somewhere else for the rest of his career, which is tough, but for the team, I think that would be best is Adam Thielen go somewhere else. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to see how that one goes. Again, like I said, people got to understand that sports are a business too. It's not just about feeling sure. All of us Viking fans we can love Adam Thielen as a player, and I still will, whether he's here next year or not, or whether he retires or not. But we got to understand that the team is what's important. Sure, he's important, obviously, as a player, but the team has to look at it from a team perspective. I think that's what a lot of fans are going to have to understand there. Next position group we have is tight end. Here we go. So, tight end, we've got three people I'm going to talk about: TJ Hawkinson, Irv Smith, and Johnny Munt. TJ Hawkinson's the cleared tight end one here, so we're going to start with him. He's due $9.39 million against the cap next year. Really wouldn't do anything if they cut him, and they wouldn't cut him anyway. So I didn't even think about that as a possible option. This offseason, I'm going to extend TJ Hawkinson. He's played very well here, even though he's only been here for a few weeks since the trade deadline, especially yesterday. He had like over 100 yards. He played very, very well. And luckily, he'll only be due $10 million next year, and he'll probably get more after that in his long-term deal. But luckily, the Lions exercised his fifth-year option, so he will be on a cheaper deal next year, on a semi-cheap deal. But after that, they will have to pay him more money because he's obviously a pass-catching tight end, and he's very valuable. I'd say he's the second best tight end currently in the NFL. Well, maybe third. Travis Kelce is pretty clearly number one, and I'd still put George Kittle ahead of him. But he's really, really good pass-catching receiver. So Hawk, no one has to worry. He's going to be back next year, obviously. And I'm going to extend him with a long-term deal. Next, we've got Irv Smith. He's not under contract next year. His rookie deal expired, and he was not a first-round pick, so they didn't have a fifth-year option on him, and I'm not re-signing him. Irv Smith had a lot of potential, but injuries kind of got to him. I don't really see any upside with them re-signing Irv Smith. I think they would be best to have Irv look elsewhere. Next up, that brings Johnny Munt. He is due $1.2 million next year. They would save $1.1 by cutting him. For Johnny Munt, on my sheet, I wrote up to them. I don't really care what they do with him. He hasn't been super great this year, but also doesn't really matter that much. He's familiar with the system. He's not going to catch a whole lot of balls, and he's not going to be the tight end one either. Again, $1.1 million doesn't do a whole lot, so it's kind of up to the team. They can do whatever they want with him. If they like him in the facility, they can keep Johnny Munt around. They can keep. He's on a 2-year deal anyways, so he is under contract. They can keep him. Wouldn't really bother me. They can do whatever they want with him. On defense, our first position isn't even a position. Ed Donatel, yeah, we're firing him. I will legitimately be surprised if Ed Donatel is around next year. I actually said kind of recently I would delete my Twitter account if he's around next year. Because that's... And let me pull it out here. I was listening to the press conference last night. I can probably find the specific words Kevin O'Connell used. It seemed like it pointed to Ed Donatel not being here. That was what I think. Now, I don't know for sure, obviously, because I'm not Kevin O'Connell, but based on his wording, it seemed more likely than not that he'd be gone. All right, this is what he said. All right, specific quote. This is the exact quote from Kevin O'Connell last night. He was asked about making changes at defensive coordinator. He said, I think Ed tried to do the best he could this year across the board, installing the defense and the scheme that we manifested together in a hope that it would come to life. He worked his absolute tail off, and his commitment to try and make some adjustments and improve was there each and every week all season long, which is debatable. I'm going to look at every aspect, special teams, offense, defense, personnel, with Kwesi, the general manager, all across the board. How can we improve schematically? All those things are really for a different time and different conversations once we've all had a chance to collect ourselves and evaluate what took place this year. So that was specifically what he said. To me, that means Ed Donatel will not be returning. Because I feel like if he was coming back, Kevin would have been pretty comfortable saying, we've got our faith in our guy. He'll be back next year. But he did not say that. He said me and Kwesi will look it over. He didn't say, specifically when talking about schematics in the defense, he said me and Kwesi will look it over. But he didn't say me, Kwesi, and Ed will look it over. So his job is not safe. We'll say that. His job is not safe. Obviously, I'd fire him. They had the 31st defense in yardage and points, which is just sad. We're looking for literally anything better than the 2020 defense, and they got worse, which was very hard to do, but they did it. So, yeah. Next, we're going to move on to a couple defensive tackles in a real quick moment. Alrighty, here we go. I think the state of Minnesota would have a bird if Ed Donatel was around next year. Here we go. We're going to start at defensive tackle with Dalvin Tomlinson. He is not under contract for this upcoming year. He was due $7.5 million against the cap last year. I'm going to re-sign him. I like Dalvin Tomlinson, especially yesterday. He had that really nice tackle for loss. I think he's a good player. Seems like he's a good dude. I like him. I would be fine with them re-signing him. Next person is Harrison Phillips. He is under contract through next year as well. Well, not as well. Dalvin Tomlinson is not. Harrison Phillips is. He's due 6.8 on the cap. They would only save 1.2 million if they cut him, so I'm going to keep Harrison Phillips. I just like him as a player, and he's a really likable dude too, so I would keep Harrison Phillips around. And I would re-sign Dalvin Tomlinson as well. So yeah, just obviously as you guys can tell, defensive line is really the only place where people are safe. Nowhere else people are safe on this defense. So I'd be fine with them two guys sticking around. Yeah, I didn't even mention any coordinator names. I'll kind of talk about that actually when I do Daniil here and Za'Darius, because there is contingent on scheme, me keeping him. Well, actually, Daniil is next on my list. So perfect. We're going to talk about Daniil Hunter. It would do them absolutely nothing if they cut him, so it really wouldn't make much sense. But a lot of my decision is dependent upon what will the Vikings do at defensive coordinator next year and what scheme do they run. If they stick with a 3-4, then I'll talk about Za'Darius. But if they stick with a 3-4, I'd keep Za'Darius around. I believe he's under contract. Yep, he is. I would keep Za'Darius around if they run a 3-4. But if they run a 4-3, I'm getting rid of Za'Darius and for sure keeping Daniil. Daniil's better as a natural 4-3 hand in the dirt. But maybe with another offseason, he could work in a 3-4. I'd like to keep Daniil either way, actually, because it does him no benefit whatsoever. Getting rid of him does no benefit. So I'd like them to keep Daniil no matter what. But Za'Darius, I'll get to him now. He's due $15.7 million against the cap next year. They would save $12.4 million if they cut him. So he has very little dead cap, and he's got a lot of money that they would save if they were to cut him. And like I was saying, for Za'Darius, it's all dependent on upon the scheme. I believe Vic Fangio runs a 3-4. I believe because Ed Donatel was he was the defensive coordinator under Vic Fangio, who ran a 3-4. And I believe Brandon Staley is also a 3-4, but I'm not exactly sure about that one. So people do have to keep that in mind when we look at candidates. As far as the Rams, I'm not super sure if Raheem Morris were to be here, even though I don't think Raheem Morris would be here. I know the Rams, Sean McVay said you guys can explore other coaching jobs. He said that to his coaches, but the Rams still have him under contract. So if the Vikings tried hiring him as defensive coordinator, the Rams could block it because they still hold the rights to him. And I don't know if the Rams would be fond of a lateral move, as in defensive coordinator to defensive coordinator. It'd have to be a higher role for them to, I feel like, for them to grant it. So I don't think Raheem Morris is a legitimate option here next year because the Rams could block him from getting hired. Yeah, I don't know why Brandon Staley's staying there. If he does, they're pretty dumb for that. Brian Flores, I don't know what scheme he runs, but it's possible. But yeah, it's all so like I was saying here, Daniil, I'd like to keep him either way. I feel like they could make him work in a 3-4. He's obviously better in a 4-3 to this point, but he's also only had 1 year of experience in the new scheme. So if they choose to stick with a 3-4, I'm thinking they're going to go back. If I'm being honest, I think they're going to go back. But if they choose to keep it, I would keep Daniil. If they don't keep the 3-4, I would get rid of Za'Darius. I'd cut him, save that 12.4. And if they go back to a 4-3, I would definitely keep Daniil then, because that's his natural. I feel like he'd be more natural in that. So yeah, that's that. Next is defensive end Jonathan Bullard. He was due $780,000 last year. Don't re-sign him. He's not even under contract next year. Per PFF, he was one of the worst players on defense this year. I don't want him back. Next, that moves us to the linebacker core, starting with Eric Kendricks. He is $11.4 million against the cap. They would save $9.5 million if they cut him, and I'm going to cut him. Eric Kendricks has been around. I believe he's been here for 10 years now. He's just old and slow, and especially yesterday, Eric Kendricks got kind of cooked out there by the Giants, especially by the Giants running backs. He got cooked pretty badly out there. So I wouldn't keep Eric Kendricks around. He's a very likable dude, and I understand that. But I think they should move to a new direction with their linebacker core. Same with Jordan Hicks. He's $6.5 million against the cap next year. They would save $5 million if they cut him, and I am gonna cut him as well. So both of the Vikings starting inside linebackers, I am gonna cut both of them. Eric Kendricks, Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks was better than Kendricks, but I don't like him either. I don't like both of them. They're both just too slow for the game now. Which is tough to say, but I mean, it's kind of true if you watched them. So I'm going to cut both of them and save the combined $14.5 million. Next up, we've got the corners. We're going to kick it off with Patrick Peterson. He is actually not under contract next year. He was due $3.1 million against the cap last year, and I would re-sign him if I was the Vikings. I like Patrick Peterson a lot. He's also one of my favorite players on the team. But he's been for the most part, good corner this year. He's done a very good job, and he's a great locker room presence. I think the players like him, even though I don't know how many players will be around next year. I think the players like him. I feel like the coaches like him as well. Fans definitely like Patrick Peterson. I would be fine with re-signing him. Our next corner we have is Chandon Sullivan. He was due $1.8 million last year. He is not under contract this upcoming year. Don't re-sign Chandon Sullivan. I'm sorry. He was not good this year. The eye test proved it. The analytics test proved it. Chandon Sullivan is not a very good corner. Again, when they signed him, I was hoping if he's mediocre, that's okay. But he was less than mediocre. I would not look to bring back Chandon Sullivan. Especially if Andrew Booth could potentially be healthy next year. Andrew Booth can play in the slot too. Next one we have is Duke Shelley. He was due $483,000 last year. Definitely re-sign him. I would definitely be happy if the Vikings re-signed Duke Shelley. He played very well this past off. What am I saying? Duke Shelley played very well this year. He was kind of limited toward the end of the year. Then he got a lot more snaps, but he played very well. So I would definitely be okay with them keeping or re-signing Duke Shelley to a new contract. Our next person that we have is safety Harrison Smith. He is currently $19.2 million against the cap. They would save $7.5 million if they cut him. I'm going to cut him. I'm cutting Harrison Smith, which is another tough one. He's been around for a long time. He's a staple for the team. But I feel like they just need a youth movement, and they have so much safety depth anyway. I'd be fine with them just taking the money. Again, they've got Cam Bynum, who didn't play super great this year. But you know what? It's okay. He's on a rookie deal, and if they can improve him in the offseason, they can make it work. But they also have Lewis Seen. Josh Metellus played very well this year, even though he got limited snaps. Josh Metellus actually played very well for the Vikings this year. So between those three, I think that's all we need. I would be okay with them cutting Harrison Smith, saving that $7.5 million. And so the last one we've got is, as suggested by my good friend and brother Matt, kicker Greg Joseph. I didn't even think about him. He's actually not under contract next year. He was due $2.4 million against the cap last year, and we're not re-signing him. We're going to look elsewhere for a kicker. Sorry, Greg. Your 61-yarder against the Giants was pretty cool, but I'm going to look elsewhere next year. So that's it. That's it, everybody. We just went through all of the major players on the Vikings. What do I think they should do next year? Again, I'll go through it one more time right here. I'm going to keep Kirk Cousins, but not give him an extension. Trade Dalvin Cook if possible, otherwise cut him. Re-sign Alexander Mattison to a small deal. Keep or cut CJ Ham, depending on if he's used in the offense or not. I'm going to cut Adam Thielen. Oh, I just realized I missed one. This is a little weird. Garrett Bradbury. So I should say I didn't talk about any of the Vikings offensive linemen because Christian Darrisaw, the left tackle, is on a rookie deal. And yeah, I don't think he's eligible for an extension until next year. So nothing with Darisaw. Ezra Cleveland's also on a rookie deal. Garrett Bradbury, we're going to talk about. Then the right guard is the LSU rookie. Why can't I suddenly think of his name? Ed Ingram, who did not play well this year, but I'm going to keep him as the right guard. Maybe an offseason will help him. Always tough when you're a rookie, so yeah, I'm going to keep Ed Ingram at right guard because he's on a rookie deal as well. And then at right tackle is Brian O'Neill, who's already signed to a long-term contract, so we don't need to do anything there. But the missing piece right there was center with Garrett Bradbury. Now, Garrett Bradbury's rookie deal has expired, and they didn't exercise his fifth-year option last year. So Garrett Bradbury will be becoming a free agent next year. Again, Bradbury played very bad his first 3 years, but he actually played pretty well this year. So looking back, it would have been great if they exercised his fifth-year option so they could have him next year as well on a semi-short or on a semi-small deal for next year. But they didn't do that because we didn't know that Garrett Bradbury was even going to be decent this year. So now that puts him in a really tough position. Do they give Bradbury an extension after just one good year, or do we look elsewhere at center? Now, this is a very tough choice for me. For me, this is the toughest choice of them all. I'm going to look elsewhere for a center. Maybe they can draft one. Maybe they can just choose to. Maybe they can choose to sign a free agent somewhere. Either way, I wouldn't extend Bradbury long term. He had one good year, but one good year out of 4, it's a bit dangerous for me. Now, obviously, like I said, it would have been great had they exercised his fifth-year option so we could have him on a pretty small money deal next year. But again, we didn't know that, so that puts him in this position because no one knew that this was going to happen. But yeah, so again, I'll go through it. I'm going to keep Kirk Cousins, not give him an extension. Attempt to trade Cook, if not cut him. Re-sign Madison to a small deal. Keep or cut CJ Ham, depending on his usage in the offense. I'm going to cut Adam Thielen. Give Justin Jefferson a huge extension in the offseason. The entire offensive line will stay the same, except I'm not going to re-sign Garrett Bradbury and look elsewhere for center. Fire Ed Donatel. Re-sign Dalvin Tomlinson. Keep Harrison Phillips. I'm going to keep Danielle Hunter. I'm going to keep Danielle Hunter no matter what. I'm going to cut Zadarius Smith if they run a 4-3, but if they run a 3-4, then I'll keep him. Don't re-sign Jonathan Bullard. I'm going to cut Eric Kendricks, cut Jordan Hicks, re-sign Patrick Peterson. Don't re-sign Chandon Sullivan. Re-sign Duke Shelley, cut Harrison Smith, extend TJ Hawkinson. Don't re-sign Irv Smith and Johnny Munt, up to them. I don't really care. They can do whatever they want with Johnny Munt. And don't re-sign Greg Joseph. If I was the GM, that's what I would do. Maybe the dude in the semi outside is listening to me. There's a dude in the semi in the street right now. Maybe he's listening to me as well. He's probably lost. Doesn't know where he's going. But yeah. That is going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like. Share with your friends if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys in the next one. Actually, I'll see you guys this upcoming weekend for picks and predictions for the divisional round, because I was sick last week, so that's why I didn't make a video. But I'll be back for this week, probably on Thursday, because if the game's already on Saturday, I don't want to film it Friday. So Thursday is probably when I'm going to be filming that video. Thanks for watching. Check that one out. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace. Have a good night. Peace out. And as always, Skull Vikings. Come on. Come on, Kwesi. Do what's right. I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys on Thursday.